Hi, welcome to Found Village. We're so happy that you're checking us out. I'm Kim Botto, and in this training, we're going to provide insight into how trauma may affect an individual, the behaviors that may occur, and practical steps to help the young people at Found Village heal and reach their full potential. The effect of trauma became really obvious to me after we adopted our two youngest daughters, one at the age of 10 and one at the age of 16. After that, I was meeting with a group of other adoptive moms with a therapist. We were having a group session, and one mom said, "My teenager doesn't trust me. She thinks I'm stupid." And then other moms joined in and they said, "That's what happens with my child. They don't trust anything that I say." And we found that that was very common with all of us because the experiences they had had, the trauma they'd experienced, had impacted the way that they viewed us. Adults in their life had not been trustworthy. They'd been hurt by the people who they were counting on to care for and support them. So by the time they met us, their new adoptive parents, they had learned that adults were not to be trusted. They had to protect themselves because nobody else would. So the therapist gave us a goal. She said that we should build trust through relationship with our kids, that we shouldn't take it personally when they rejected us or they were disrespectful, because the way that they were responding to us was actually more about the experiences they'd had in the past rather than anything about us. So she encouraged us to work to be a safe place, a safe person where they could process the past, heal, and make a plan for the future. So regardless of how you choose to serve at Found Village, you can be a safe adult. And you can be an advocate as you serve food or mentor a young person or help plan birthday celebrations. So for all of us, the experiences that we've had, the words spoken to us, they form our belief system and they influence how we view ourselves, how we view others, and the world around us. For the young people at Found Village, they have some beliefs about us that are based on the way that other adults have interacted with them. Many of them have experienced really hard stuff, trauma, and this influences what they believe, which then affects their behavior. So the way they respond or don't respond to us can be hurtful, but we need to remember it is not about us. It's about us being a safe place for them to process, to build relationships, to heal, and to reach their full potential. And we have the opportunity to play a significant role in their journey. So the goal of this training, we want to explore three things. First, the effect of trauma on our brains and how it affects our behavior, our feelings, and our responses. Two, we want to consider the importance of relationships and helping young people we work with reach their full potential. Relationships are so important. And then lastly, we want to share some practical ideas to help us be safe people in the lives of young people, and also to have the knowledge and empathy to advocate for them in the community. The relationships we build with young people may significantly impact their future relationships with their family, their friends, their employers, their peers, and just their overall community. So we've mentioned trauma a couple times. Let's talk about what trauma is. Trauma is actually, it's not a list of things. It's a real or perceived experience that leaves a person feeling hopeless, helpless, or fearing for their life. It's an experience that our brain just can't process, doesn't know how to cope with. Now, I just said that it's not a list of things, but I'm going to give you some things that trauma could be. Could be physical or sexual abuse, exposure to domestic violence or community violence, neglect, incarceration of a parent, poverty, racism, death of a loved one, significant medical trauma, worldwide pandemic. And trauma is often directly experienced, but trauma may also occur when we've witnessed a traumatic event or have just heard about a traumatic event. Trauma can be one event, and it also can be repeated exposure. But the most traumatic aspect isn't the actual abuse or neglect. It's the damage done to the connections with significant people in our lives. Experiencing unspeakable hurt or rejection by the very people who we are counting on to protect and care for us affects not only those relationships, but it affects future relationships because the world becomes a scary place. And through this trauma, we learn that the only person we can count on is ourselves. So we don't trust the help that others offer. The damage comes through relationship, but then it's through other relationships that healing and growth begin to happen. Relationships that we may have with young people. It's through these new relationships that trust is rebuilt, feelings of safety return, and then instead of seeing themselves as a victim, they begin to gain confidence and accept help from others. Dr. Bruce Perry was a pioneer in working with kids who had experienced trauma. He's also a psychiatrist. And he says, the research on the most effective treatments to help child trauma victims might be accurately summed up this way. What works best is anything that increases the quality and number of relationship in the child's life. So our relationship can help these young people reach their full potential. It's also important to note that being in a relationship with someone who's experienced trauma can be very difficult and at times frustrating. Experiencing trauma actually changes the chemistry of the brain. So to get a sense of how trauma affects the body, consider you're driving your car and a car runs a stoplight and almost hits you, or maybe they actually do hit you. The symptoms that we will have in our body may include heart rate increase, our palms begin to sweat, our breathing becomes shallow. We become hyper-focused on one thing, that's protecting ourselves and those in the car. While this is happening, the stress hormone cortisol is released, and physical changes actually happen in the brain. Blood rushes from the prefrontal cortex, and this is the part of the brain that controls language and critical thinking, also known as the thinking part of the brain. And the blood moves back here to the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that drives the flight or fight response. So when somebody experiences stress or trauma over and over, their brain can actually get stuck, focusing on protection, similar to how we may have felt when the car was speeding towards us. So focusing on protection rather than relationship with limited access to this thinking part of the brain. So when we see a behavior that just seems out of control or inappropriate, have you ever thought, what were they thinking? Well, actually, they weren't thinking, is they may not have had access to the thinking part of their brain. So having a safe adult like us in their life can actually help rewire the brain and build new pathways. So what's our role as a safe adult? Well, we can impact the belief systems of young people, which the belief systems are how they see themselves, others, and the world around them, which then affects their behavior, because there is a distinct link that's been proven through research between what we believe and our behavior. So if our experiences have been rooted in fear, neglect, and anger, our view of ourselves would be, we're helpless, we're a victim. We can't trust anybody, and the world's a scary place. We may pull away to protect ourselves. Also, if this is what you're experiencing, we may self-soothe with drugs or alcohol, or with purchases that we may look at as a waste of money. Somebody who's experienced trauma over and over may overreact to things because they simply don't have coping skills. Not getting a job isn't about this one job. It's about years of rejection. So the response to the loss of that one job may be bigger than we might expect, because the response is about more than that one job. On the other hand, if we grow up in a nurturing and supportive environment, we see ourselves as capable. We're willing to take risks because we know we're going to have support if we fail. If we mess up, there are going to be people around us that will help pick us up and start again. We see the world filled with opportunities rather than barriers and danger. So see the difference that your environment that you grew up in, how it impacts your beliefs. So all of the people that we're building relationship with through Found Village have experienced some level of trauma. Most have been involved with or in the custody of JFS due to significant challenges they've experienced in childhood. Because of this, their brains are wired for protection, just like our brains are in the midst of the car accident or potential car accident. But brains can heal and change. The old pathways may be blown out, but we can help build new ones through relationships. Their brain can be rewired for connection. So when we see negative behavior, we might be thinking, is this a trauma response? Or are they just being disrespectful, irresponsible, or unmotivated? Well, we may never know. And it is not our job to diagnose. What we do know is these kids have stories before they met us, and they have life experiences and words spoken over them that have impacted how they perceive themselves, us, and the world. So you may be wondering, what are some behaviors that we might see? Well, there's a wide range of behaviors. Here's just a few and some ideas to set ourselves up as a safe adult, while also helping them grow and heal. One's a transactional relationship. We may get calls, or when we're serving in a particular area, where people are asking us for things, money. They're seeing if they can trust you. So we can build trust by meeting some tangible needs, but we want to do it in a way that helps them for the long term, not just meets their immediate need. So if somebody asks you for money or furniture or clothes, rather than just give them the money or the resource they're asking for, which may actually hurt them rather than help them, talk to your Found Village staff contact, and we'll help figure out how to meet those needs in a long-term way. Another thing you might see is lack of focus. They're easily distracted and lose things all the time. Their keys, their ID, their bus cards. Because what happens is when they've experienced trauma over and over again, they become over diligent. They're trying to survive. They're hyper vigilant. So I saw that with one of my daughters sitting in the classroom, and she was so focused on everything that was going on around her that she couldn't focus on the most important thing, was what the teacher had to say. So she couldn't remember the assignment the teacher gave, but she could tell you where every security camera was in the building. She could tell you everything that had happened in the hall or outside the classroom during class. And it was through this that I realized it's not enough for a young person to be safe. They need to feel safe. So as we work to create safe environments with safe adults at Found Village, the young people will begin, they do begin to feel safe. And as this happens, their focus improves, enabling them to be more successful. Another thing that you might see is bio-family tension. And this may seem confusing to you, as your perception may be that their bio-family has let them down, maybe in some really significant ways. But our bond to our birth family, even if it's unsafe, it's a bond that's not easily broken. We all desire the love and approval of our birth family. So if a young person maybe is talking in a negative or critical way about their birth family, it's really important that we don't join in bashing their birth family. Instead, we can listen empathetically, use reflective listening, and give them some space to process. This will really help build trust. Another thing you might experience is a young person being closed off. They don't share much about themselves or what's going on or what they're really feeling. They give just one-word answers. This may actually be a way of protecting themselves, or they simply might not know how to share their story. So some ways that we can help is to keep those lines of communication open, but not being shocked. So when they tell us something that may seem shocking, check what our face is communicating. And In those conversations, if you ever hear something that indicates that they may be currently in an unsafe situation, or they may be a danger to themselves or others, please share with your Found Village staff contact immediately. Another thing you might see is they get aggressive when they're embarrassed or lash out. This is, you've heard about the fight, flight, freeze response. They haven't learned how to cope and regulate. So what we can do once they settle down and become regulated is share how you cope. And the reason that it's important to wait until they're calmed down is when they're in this agitated, fearful state, they don't have access to the thinking part of their brain. So we can say some really brilliant things, and they may simply not even be able to process it. Most of all, the thing to remember is we must remain calm, regardless of how agitated they become. And as said before, reach out for help. Another thing you might see is they don't call when they need help. This might be because they don't know how to ask for help, or in the past they've asked and no one responded. When we interact with young people who do need help, it's really important to help them speak for themselves, to use their voice. Help them discover and work with your Found Village staff contact resources that might be able to help them. You see, if we always speak for them, then they start believing that they can't speak for themselves, that they're not capable. What we really want to do is we want to help build resilience. In ways that we can do that is we can give them some control, allow them to make some choices about where they're going to sit when they eat. Or if you're meeting them outside of Found Village as a mentor, let them decide where you're going to meet. And how are you going to communicate? Is it going to be via text? Is it going to be via DMs? Also, we can help build resilience by telling them what to do rather than what not to do. So an example with that would be, let's say you're serving food in an event. Instead of saying, don't leave your trash laying around, that's telling them what not to do. They might need some help. They might need to be told exactly what to do. So instead of saying, don't leave your trash laying around, you say, we've got garbage cans around this space. Please clean up your space and put stuff in the garbage can. So it's also important to note, as we engage with the young people of Found Village, is one day they may seem like they're in a really, really great space, they're growing and they're accepting help. And then the next week they're not. Well, that's kind of how the trajectory of healing and growth goes. It is not a straight line. It's not a straight line for us. It's not a straight line for them. You'll see peaks and valleys along the way. And please don't get discouraged. But what we want to encourage you in is, regardless of the role that you play at Found Village, you are helping young people learn that they have a village around them that can be trusted and is here to walk alongside them as they journey to independence. The behaviors that we may encounter aren't about us. They're a result of what has happened to them many, many years prior to us even meeting them. So, and please know that we, as the Found Village team, are here to support you as we all grow alongside the young people of Found Village. Thank you so much for engaging with us.